Hey guys, what's up? It's TenneyBox here. Welcome back to another episode of Casual Commentary. This is actually the first time I've done the series in quite a bit, but I've been planning on bringing it back for quite a bit now, so I decided to make a Final Fantasy related video because a lot of my stuff on my channel recently has been talking about Final Fantasy stuff. I even upgraded my channel art. I made some Final Fantasy stuff for that. I think it's pretty cool. Of course, I was using Final Fantasy assets, of course, so there's that. I didn't like completely hand draw everything, but I really like the finished product for it. So if you'd like to check that out and give me some feedback, let me know in the comments down below this video if you would be so kind. So what Casual Commentary is I pick a video game, I talk about a subject while I live play it. So we're playing Final Fantasy 3 today, and we're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which I am quite nervous for. So to give you some some kind of background for what Final Fantasy I've been playing recently. I recently finished playing Final Fantasy 15. Not all the way, of course. I still have a lot of side quests to go through and a lot of achievements that I want to hunt in that game because I really want to get the most out of that game. It's one of those games where if you put more effort in, you're going to get more out of it, in my opinion, so that's what I kind of want to do with it. But I've also been dabbling in some older Final Fantasy games, such as Final Fantasy 3, and that's why you're seeing gameplay of that here today. For my opinion on Final Fantasy 15, I did a review of it, and I didn't really have too many gripes about the game. I really enjoyed it. It is one of my favorite Final Fantasy games in such a long time. And that is honest, because the last game that I really enjoyed, keep in mind, I haven't played 11 or 12 or 14. So the last major Final Fantasy game I had played until 15 was 13, and I couldn't stomach getting through that game. And I know a lot of people felt the same way. I understand that if you like it, that's whatever. I'm not here to crap in your opinion or anything. I specifically, just myself, just could not beat that game. It wasn't that it was a hard thing. Don't get me wrong, it was challenging, but I just it didn't want to finish it. And I've never really felt that way about a Final Fantasy game before. I've always stuck it out to the very end, unless you're talking about Final Fantasy 3 as a kid, or even as a teenager when I was playing it a few years ago. I would rage quit this game quite a bit. And I'm still not giving up hope on this game. I really want to finish it, and that's why you see it here, or that's why you're seeing it here. But for the Final Fantasy VII Remake, we have been going through so many loops and loop-de-loops. It's insane. That's a terrible analogy. I don't know why I said loop-de-loop twice, but you guys know what I mean. Final Fantasy VII Remake is having the toughest time figuring out its identity. We went from having, it's going to be released, what did they say, 2018, I think, or 2017, or what was the original date, I don't even know. And now there's, not even confirmed, when it's going to be. The last thing, I made a story about this, or made a video talking about a story about this, I think last year or the year before, talking about how they wanted to make it episodic. That video I was trying to be very optimistic, but I'll let my pessimism take over now, my realism, I should say. Please keep episodic gameplay out of other games. I like episodic games sometimes when they're story-driven. But with Final Fantasy, there's a mixture of gameplay and story, right? In my opinion, I like the story more, but I also really love the gameplay. Thus is why I can come back to play every installment of the game, mostly. And I'm still working on going back to playing other ones because I like the story and I like the gameplay. And I understand that episodic gameplay doesn't necessarily mean, hey, you're going to have, literally no gameplay. Yeah, I understand that. It's not going to be like a Telltale style game. And I completely understand that and respect that. But at the same time, you don't have, a reason to put Final Fantasy VII in episodic form. Because if you're going to throw the excuse of, it's too big, then, what about Final Fantasy 15? That game is massive. There are a lot more massive games out there that aren't episodic. Technically, if you want to say episodic on Xbox and PS4 games or whatever, back in the day, I know they used to. I don't know if they do this anymore. They had discs, different disc sets. You had to do insert disc 1 for more, or insert disc 2. Is that what they mean by episodic? Because I feel like somebody needs to understand what they're talking about when they're marketing. When I think episodic, I'm thinking of a Telltale style game where it's oh my gosh, Cloud just entered this city. Oh my gosh, it's a cliffhanger, boys. What's gonna happen next episode? And there's so much harm that could come from this, because season passes. Can you imagine that? Buy the Final Fantasy VII season pass to get access to every Final Fantasy VII chapter. It's I don't think that they're stupid enough to do that, but the way that AAA gaming is going nowadays, it scares me into thinking that it might. And that's what I really hate about gaming right now is that there really isn't anybody sticking out for the consumer, in my opinion. It's always trying to shill every last dime out of every consumer. And that's why I tend to stick towards playing older games and very rarely play newer games. In fact, the only newer-ish game that I've bought recently, which was actually last weekend, and that's because I got a Steam gift card for Easter. Thank you very much, Grandma and Grandpa, for that. Just a side note. And that was Cuphead. And I spent, I think, $20 on that. And I think that was a pretty good purchase. I'm still working on playing through that game, obviously. If you want to see some gameplay of that in the future, let me know. But I'm having a blast with that. And I think the only thing you can buy extra is the soundtrack, I want to say. I think that's the only DLC. I could be wrong on that. I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty sure from what I saw and understand is that was the only DLC. With Final Fantasy VII, I am so scared. Final Fantasy 15, for what I know, other than the DLC, which I don't... Okay, I'll kind of cover this in this video, but I made a video talking about the story mode DLC, and if I was going over whether it was worth it to purchase it or not. In that video, I forgot to mention the fact that they were $5 a piece, or I think $20 with the season pass. In my opinion, that is not worth what I got. So the purchase that I had gotten is that it just came with the Windows edition. Like, there was literally no extra, like, hey, pay $20 to play these stories. Because I'll be honest, if I knew that there was DLC before buying the PC version, I might have just skipped out on it. Because having the term DLC, when I'm paying $50 or $60 for a AAA title right up front, and then saying, like, oh, yeah, by the way, there's more... You have to pay more money for more content of the story. It's a really big turnoff, and I really don't appreciate it when developers do this. I'm not, like, trying to crap on Square Enix or anything, because I really like them as a company. And I also like a lot of other gaming companies as companies. But to be fair, the people that I like are the developers of the games, not the people kind of, like, pulling the puppet strings behind the thing, like, oh, maybe put in some loot box system, maybe? Because we need some loot boxes. And Final Fantasy Mobile has gone through a crap load of this, in my opinion. Though, I've been playing Opera Omnium and Record Keeper, which are iOS/Android/Google Play phone games, and you can also play that in emulator, but that's besides the point. They do have loot box systems, but in my opinion, it's very manageable just to grind out the stuff. But when I hear the word loot box as an outsider, I'm just like, get me away from that game. For example, Far Cry 5. A recent title released by Ubisoft, which I have been seeing a lot of gameplay for, and I am really hyped for that game, and I understand that a lot of people are really enjoying that at the moment. It's a $60 game, and on top of that, there are microtransactions that quote-unquote speed up some gameplay. That is tedious, to say the least, to think that developers would rather have people pay a little bit of extra money to skip. So, like, can you imagine, like, oh, pay $5 to skip this Final Fantasy 16 or Final Fantasy VII Remake boss? I could, honest to God, see it happening at this point, and it's kind of disheartening as a consumer of things, of games and medium of this culture. Like, to think that there's actually stuff like, hey, you can skip this. It's like, I swear, it's becoming a mobile game. Mobile games, remember how they have all... Like, of course you remember. If you've played a mobile game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's always like, oh, you gotta you have to upgrade your home base. You gotta wait 20 minutes. Or you can pay a few gems here with IRL money. And you can go ahead and, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. And that's what I feel like kind of what modern gaming is going into. And by the way, this is a casual commentary, so of course I'm going to be playing live as well as kind of go off in tangents on random things. So if this is a longer video, I apologize, but I do want to make every point clear. And it's almost like a podcast, but it's not going to be because I'm still working on a separate podcast, which you'll hear more about in more days to come. I still have to manage a bunch of stuff with that, create some more design stuff. I understand that I did do a live stream of it. It's probably still going to be called Pop Goes the Culture Podcast. It's just a matter of me getting my act together and kind of scheduling out things properly. But with Final Fantasy VII Remake on the horizon, supposedly, it makes me very nervous. You got two things involved. I'm scared for microtransactions, and I'm also scared for the episodic thing. I don't care what the argument is saying that, hey, maybe episodic can make it better. Maybe you can fit more content to it. I full-heartedly disagree on this statement because it doesn't really change anything. You're still going to be downloading all of the stuff into one big pack anyways. It's going to be... And it's even more insulting, by the way, if they release one episode early or something like that. I would be furious if I bought that game. It's like, oh, $60 for the season pass. Oh, by the way, you have to wait 6 months for the entirety of the game to come out. Like, episodic, what do you mean by that? Square Enix, like, I don't... How do you go from 15, or Final Fantasy 15, where everything's extremely open world, and, like, there's the last few chapters are, of course, condensed, which I thought was a perfect formula, by the way. Because it even warns you, like, hey, by the way, guys, if you don't, you can get your side quest done before you activate this quest, or you're kind of not going to be able to come back to the end of the game. But even after the end of the game, and it, in my opinion, isn't too long of a wait. Like, I was in after, like, a day, I think, and that's me playing casually. Like, I was back to being able to do side quests in the main world. And that's from a casual player. So I don't understand what the point is with making it episodic. Like, ugh. And then all these delays, and then I saw something saying that they only finished the first level. Like, they hadn't finished the opening, like, scene or whatever. It's just like, bro, why would you announce it this early if you don't have your act together? Like, you realize that and this is a big flaw of the gaming industry, of, like, the consumers, of us, is that we overhype things massively. I can't even tell you how many projects have been ruined for me, because I'm just like, hey, oh my god, this looks amazing, everybody's hyping the crap out of this. But now I've kind of, like, wised up to it, and, like, okay, I'm literally setting my expectations at 0, which I think is what a lot of gamers and movie consumers and, like, other stuff in this medium needed to do. They had to put their expectations at 0, because when they go in, like, with high expectations, which I technically should have for a Square Enix game, it sometimes gets disappointing when it's not as innovative and as breathtaking as I once thought it would be. I'm not saying that Final Fantasy 15 wasn't innovative. I definitely was. There were some flaws with it, though. The combat was kind of clunky, in my honest opinion. It was great in my... like I said, it's like a double-edged sword. It was great, but it was clunky. There was one flaw that I want to talk about that really kind of... I'll say this, because it's true. It broke the combat. It was impossible for me to game over, and I only game over because I did this one thing a few times. That's when I ran out of potions. On normal difficulty, or on easy, it's actually easier on easy because you can get revived, I think, most of the time by the carbuncle. What's the dog? I think it's the carbuncle, but whatever. But on normal mode, you can just, like, oh, I'm in danger mode. You can either get revived by a squad mate, which is 95% of the time pretty easy to do if you can kind of just crawl towards them. I had really no trouble with that most of the time, unless there was a big freaking boss attacking me. I could use a high potion, X elixir, or not, an elixir, an X potion, or a high elixir, I think were the... Sorry, I'm not sure if I got all this right. Or if you actually got knocked out of battle, you can use a Phoenix down and fully revive yourself. The only reason why I thought this is a flaw is because in previous installments of the games, especially when it was more focused on turn-by-turn combat, is you weren't necessarily okay if you just use a Phoenix down. You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of times and scenarios and situations where sometimes when I would have to, like, revive somebody, it could actually end up killing me because I wasted a turn of... you know, there are different... there are a lot of different elements that go into getting game overs in Final Fantasy, but in Final Fantasy 15, I felt it particularly hard to get a game over, which is a weird complaint, because for me, I hate getting game overs. It's one of the worst feelings I've ever had in a Final Fantasy game, let alone a real game, and especially Final Fantasy. It's just so heartbreaking. You've got a long cutscene to rewatch, you freaking fought this boss for an hour long, you've done it numerous times, and it really starts building up. But with 15, I never had that feeling, which is a weird complaint, like I said, but it was definitely something that last installment was missing. And that worries me about Final Fantasy VII. What are they exactly going to do with the combat? You have two different sides of Square Enix right now. You have the mobile games, which preach about turn-by-turn combat, but the newest installment on consoles, or on PC, which is Final Fantasy 15, is an open-world type Skyrim-ish, or like third-person combat, which I think each one has its own flaws and its own perks. But the problem here is that they've created a discord with this. They've created a divide. I personally would much rather prefer, in some cases, turn-by-turn combat. Like I said, though, I really enjoyed having an open-world Final Fantasy game like 15. And I really enjoyed the third-person element. So you can see why I'm torn here. I like both of them. But the problem is now is that you have a lot of camps of people that only want one of those things. You're creating a Discord. You're doing the same thing that kind of what Call of Duty's been doing with the space stuff. You have a big group of people that want space, and you have a bunch of people that want boots on the ground. I personally want boots on the ground, but who's to say that Joe Schmo is necessarily wrong for wanting that? You know, it's a big problem that a lot of games face when they're trying to innovate, but they actually end up kind of like screwing themselves in the end, because a lot of people are now in two different camps. I would always prefer this turn by turn turn by turn combat, because for me, my first Final Fantasy game was Final Fantasy X, and in my opinion, is my favorite game in the entire series, just based on story and gameplay alone. Every Final Fantasy game drags at some point, and I'm not saying that there's like there's like the perfect Final Fantasy game, because obviously whichever one that you enjoyed the most is going to be the one that's your favorite. You're not going to be like, oh, well, this one I hated, but it's still my favorite. Like, no. You're going to want to pick the one that you actually like, which is common sense, right? So I'm not here to say that Final Fantasy X is the best Final Fantasy. In my opinion, it's the best Final Fantasy, but that doesn't mean that you have to think that. And I don't want to make people make them think that I'm making them think that. That was the stupidest thing I've ever said. But you see my predicament here with Final Fantasy VII Remake. You have two. Even if we brought it down to Final Fantasy VII games, you're like, okay, well, in the Final Fantasy VII series, there was only been turn-by-turn combat, which I would say, no, that's not true. There's Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core on the PSP, which I actually have played. I haven't finished 7 yet, and you're like, oh my god, how is he making a Final Fantasy VII video without talking or without playing it? I completely agree in some cases, but I don't think that sorry, let me catch my breath here. I don't think that not necessarily completing a game makes it adept from criticism and like kind of rambling thoughts, because like it or not, Square Enix has kind of set a precedent for what kind of games that they have. Obviously, a lot of Final Fantasy games are similar, but each one has its own merits and its own individuality. Some prefer open combat, or and then turn-by-turn combat, open worlds, linear, which, by the way, linear... Oh my gosh, sorry, I don't ran here. Final Fantasy 13, for those of you that don't know, I said this earlier in the video, I don't like it, and that's because the entire game is linear to a T without any innovation of gameplay. And it was very, very annoying to have one person, if they die, the party leader, the only one you really kind of technically can control out of the group, if they die, it's game over. I hated that. I absolutely despised, and you have no idea. That's like one of the main reasons I didn't finish the game. The second, of course, being that it was so linear that it drove me to the point of insanity, and I felt like I was just running down one endless hallway. Like, it actually had a weird effect on me. Like, I actually kind of felt depressed while playing that game, because I was like, okay, we're down a hallway. Oh, wow. It's a hallway. Yay, another hallway. Oh, boy. And you could make the same argument against Final Fantasy X, but I would change that to say that the story makes the environment not seem like a hallway. And there were always little areas to explore in between, and they also opened up the airship not too far, or towards the end of the game, but it was a reasonable amount. Like, I played Final Fantasy 13 for quite some time, and I don't even know if there's an airship. I'm assuming there's an airship, but I don't know. I'm going to stop ranting about this game before I hit, like, a 40-minute type video. I don't even know where we're at right now. I've just kind of been talking from the heart. I don't know. I kind of lose myself when playing games and just talking about them. But I am extremely worried about Final Fantasy VII's Remake. You have a lot of issues, or you have a lot of possible issues with this game. Is it going to be episodic? If it's going to be episodic, I might actually skip the entire game altogether. And that's not being just like, hey, you don't give me what I want, I'm not going to buy your product. Like, I legitimately don't want to play a game that's episodic that I haven't had to play episodically before. That's, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a better example here. Yeah, let's say this. That's like getting a Pokemon game and then having it like split up into different episodes, like episode 1, badge 1, episode 2, badge 2. Like, it's annoying. It doesn't fit in this franchise. And why, what has it been, 20 years, I think, since, what's the first Final Fantasy game? I think it's 25 years, 25th anniversary? Or is that from, I don't even know. I think it's Square Enix's, I don't know what I think. I'm rambling at this point. I don't want to spout out misinformation. I don't know what anniversary they're on, but however many years that this game franchise has been out, why now? Why now? Of all games, be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to be episodic content. Okay. I don't understand what the Telltale effect is here. By Telltale, I mean Telltale Games. Telltale Games is like episode. Oh, for those who don't know, there are some episodic games out there that I really enjoy. So some of those games would include Alan Wake, Life is Strange. Although the writing in Life is Strange wasn't like tip top, pitch perfect or whatever, I still really enjoyed the game. I liked the concepts, I liked the characters, and it really was charming in its own way, even though the dialogue was sometimes really cringy. So that's my opinion on Life is Strange. With Alan Wake, it was very captivating for me because I liked the gameplay. I also liked the overarching mystery, and I really liked the characters. There wasn't a character I was like, man, I really hate this character. Like, don't get me wrong, if you can play through a game without liking the character because you can always like mute him or whatever. But for me, I like to have a personal connection. I'm like, oh wow, this guy's a writer. I'm a writer. Okay, this person is a high school student, or when I played Life is Strange, I was a high school student or whatever. So it's like, okay, little details I can kind of relate on and kind of like put myself into that world. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to immerse yourself in the world before you to like the game, but it definitely makes it go a lot farther, in my opinion. I don't even, this video is going nowhere because I don't understand. There's no difference of what Square Enix is going to do, whether or not they see this video or not, which I highly doubt that they would ever see this video, or that anybody else for that matter would. This is a long video of a random person on the internet ranting about Final Fantasy VII, that a game that hasn't even come out yet, let alone have a release date. I'm actually really concerned about this because if you look up Final Fantasy VII Remake, you can go ahead and pre-order it right now on Best Buy. Why? Why would you want to pre-order this game? We've had nothing but misinformation spread about it. You know what? Oh, it'll be out 2017. It'll be out 2018. Okay, and I understand that 2018 is not over yet, but trust me, in my humble opinion, it won't be out in 2018. They'd be mad to release it in 2018. You know what I mean? You have so much going for this game, and there's so much just crap being added to it. Like, oh, it's gonna be episodic. Like, I know I've brought up that point a lot, but episodic is just a turnoff for me when it comes to, like, JRPG games, and most games in general. Unless it's completely story-driven, without a lot of gameplay elements, such as a Telltale-type game, Alan Wake, Life is Strange, I don't think that it should be episodic. Don't get me wrong, I really like episodic games, like I said. I like a good story. And I think that some games deserve in the right to be episodic because it almost feels like a TV show that you're kind of playing. I really like those types of games. But Telltale does it in a different way. I feel like I'm ranting on every company. Telltale is like its own, like, it's supposed to be choose your own adventure, but it's not really because it ends up screwing whatever character doesn't die anyways. I hate playing Telltale games now because I know exactly what's going to happen. And then when you're like, oh, I don't want this to happen because I changed the future or the outcome, that person ends up dying anyways. And it becomes just a giant, like, Ferris wheel of just like, oh, a Ferris wheel is a terrible example, but you know what I mean? It loops and doesn't change course. Like, no matter what instance you take on that Ferris wheel or whatever, that sounds like that's a terrible analogy. I'm so sorry. But there's no outcome difference, and I don't think that Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, or not Crisis Core, God, Crisis Core is a great game. If you want a prequel to Final Fantasy VII, that's a really great game. And screw the remake, just go play Crisis Core. Crisis Core has no microtransactions. Unfortunately, it is only a PSP, but you can always emulate that or just play it on the original if you want to. It has really great combat. It has some great bosses as well, and I really enjoyed that game quite a lot. I'm scared for this remake, man, because it's one of those games that it's almost Half-Life 3-esque because it's such a big, vital game in the Final Fantasy franchise that there's always going to be that camp of people that hates it no matter what. It could be the perfect game and still garner a lot of hate. And I don't think that Square Enix is up to the challenge from what they've been presenting to us in terms of just news about the game, of delays. And like I said, the episodic thing is a big thing in my mind that really just irks me. It like irks me the wrong way, and you know, I really want what's best for this franchise, and I've always will stand by it unless Square Enix like starts like disrespecting the customer, like in this case of EA. I don't think I'll play another EA game again until they either like actually make. What am I talking? My words are dying here slowly. Unless EA makes up and like actually changes things in their games to not be consumer unfriendly, then I'm not gonna play their games. It's as simple as that. But in the case of Final Fantasy, I'll stick by them until they drive this franchise into the ground. I don't think they will. I really hope that they don't. But I'm going to have faith in this one. I want Final Fantasy VII Remake to be a great game. I want to be able to experience that game either on PC or on a PS4, whatever it may be, and just have a great experience with it. And yeah, I hope that it comes out great. It's just really troublesome that we're having a lot of delays and just news that doesn't really seem too appealing, especially when you have so many other great games in the franchise that seem to be doing what they're already announcing better. Like, when you say episodic, that just, I don't know, I feel like I'm stuck on that one point of being episodic. I don't like it. I'm sorry, guys. Thanks for watching. Keep calm and trust your instincts. If you want more casual commentaries or more Final Fantasy videos or more podcast videos, more short film stuff, or more writing videos, which I'm working on currently, let me know in the comment section down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm trying to do really hard to get to 1,000 subscribers, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Thank you guys for watching. Peace out.